Okay, welcome back to another episode of Data in Sports. This is episode 17 actually today is Wednesday, May 13th. We'll be releasing this coming Monday, May 18th. And I have, happy to have Alex Sirard from Evo Athletics joining us today. So Alex, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome.
It's my pleasure. Excited to be here.
This is going to be a lot of fun, as I think I say on every episode, but especially because we're going to be talking from a goaltender perspective. And if people don't notice, you have the chest protector there behind you. So very apt for today's episode in terms of the theme we'll talk about. So before we get into your background, a little bit more about who you are, what you're up to, and the core of the episode in terms of the topics, before finishing with the only name segment behind the data. First, we do in every episode, state the ideal outcome for the audience so they know what to expect in terms of what we'll be discussing. So today, we want to inspire athletes, highlighting goaltenders, so focusing from goalie perspective, on how they can bridge the development gap using data to improve strengths and or weaknesses based on your educational background, your playing experience, coaching career, and now especially with Evo. So does that sound good to you?
Absolutely.
All right, sweet. So let's get started in terms of like who you are and what you're up to before we get into what has shaped your perspective on using data and technology to help guide player development, and perhaps some that comes from your background. So give us an idea of like what you do, maybe starting with Evo, or if you want in terms of where you got started from the beginning, however.
Yes. So like many Canadians, I'm a hockey guy through and through. Grew up playing hockey. From day one, I was a goalie. Tried it, never looked back. So stuck with it. And then what brought me to do what I'm doing now is that earlier in my high level performance career, I started getting hip issues like a lot of guys get on because we didn't really address it the right way. It was always like, how can we manage pain? Never really addressed the issue. How can we improve on it? So I thought later on in my career, I was like, it kept getting worse and worse. Like there has to be something else, right? Why just ice it? Why just take ibuprofen, whatever it was that we were doing back then. So I went to school after my junior career, used my scholarship that I obtained to go to school and do my degree in kinesiology to hopefully learn more about the human body and then the science behind it and what we could do. And we want to create a system that allows us to really eliminate and decrease the risk of injuries or the wear and tears of the goalies. And then that, like I was saying, I want to translate to every sports and hockey being the main one, but goalie was my main focus, right? I had so many injuries in my career. I didn't want to have other goalies go through this, and injuries just derailed my season. I would play well, an injury would happen, and then suddenly like now I'm out rehabbing, coming back, and now I have to rebuild all over again. So how can we eliminate those cases for the next future of hockey players? That's what I wanted to do. So I just went to my degree, played university hockey here in Canada. And then once my degree ended, I jumped right into strength conditioning with the University of Lethbridge. And then from there, I spent 5 years working with our sport teams at the university, and then decided to create Evo. I wanted something that was different than what we have to offer here in Southern Alberta. I want it to be more cutting edge, closing the gap on what you see in college routes, what you see at the professional ranks. And I really wanted to bring that same type of environment to our athletes here. And one of the biggest aspect that is data, right? How can we use data and implement data so we can have better image, idea profile of our athletes and really help and tailor development according to what their needs are, rather than just guessing. And I felt that for me, when I first got here, we just did good job at the basics, but it was just very basics. I wanted to dig a little deeper. And then that's how Evo was created. It was about the idea of evolving how we're doing certain things and making it more, in a way, modern and catching up with the times. And still to this day, I'm still pushing towards that. Like what technology, what science is coming out, what can we implement here in our facility and make sure that we're providing the best possible for our athletes.
Now, for how long has Evo been around?
Evo now is 7 years old. It's been an ongoing project since 2019. We're really like trying to add more and more every year and then grow every year and add more to our services and experience into what we're doing. It was about 7 years now.
Oh wow, that's to me, this is like a non sequitur and totally unrelated. Time doesn't make sense anymore.
No, no, since the pandemic, yeah,
Yeah, sometimes like a week, like last week, when I was in Poland for watching the Ice Hockey World Championships, like Division 1A, that feels like a year ago.
that's crazy.
So 7 years is quite a fair amount of time, I
Yeah,
believe, in today's, maybe to use an overused expression, modern world with data and technology where there's so much rapid innovation happening. And it
yes,
seems like it's just happening even more.
yeah.
But still curious, it's still curious for me to hear, maybe not so surprising that even though this is a generalization, many places are doing the basics, right?
It's still very prevalent, and which is very surprising to me as well. Like that's oftentimes even with our hockey academy here that we're partnered with, a lot of kids come in and they're like a bit of an wow about like, oh wow, there's so much technology, there's so much goes beyond it, and young athletes love it, right? They like to see that they're progressing. They like to see that it's just a cookie cutter. We're actually addressing what their deficiencies are, and it's always a nice appeal. And it's no different. You look at every football programs, you look at hockey programs, it's like they always have the best of the best technology, great staff behind it. And those guys are exposed to them as the first time at the college level. So my goal was kind of like, hey, how can we bring this to high school level as well? So when our guys move on, they're better prepared for that next step. And no, it is very baffling to me that we see a lot of people just using the very old metrics, like the typical testing that we use, more so to see like more of like an accountability standpoint. Hey, are you prepared? Or are you not prepared? Did you show up to work this summer type of deal? Whereas like now, like it's not for accountability that we test. I know some athletes don't like being tested. It's so we get the best results and development for you, right? We want to build the best program possible that we can provide you so you have the right development. At the end of the day, the athlete's how it's put to work, right? It's the data it is very useful, but without the work and the ethic of the athlete, it just won't work. But at least we have a better path towards guiding them towards that end goal that they want to have, whether it's be AAA, junior, whatsoever, whatever they want to do. We want them to have a perfect close to perfection path. So there's really tailored to them, and the monitoring is crucial. And that goes with Now on Ice as well, right? We have so much data Now on Ice that we can utilize to improve the performances and play at our best. So it's something we really want to implement and make sure that these guys understand it's there for your usage, but you have to put in the work still, right? That's the other component to that.
Yes, it's again in today's society, I think most people generally want magic pill, supplement, answer, or what have you. And I'm not going to I don't want to misquote Kevin Neild on a prior episode, who is the performance director for the Boston Bruins. He was saying how, like, you still have to do the foundational work. Like, that drives a lot of the value or outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not to say that the basics aren't important. I mean,
No.
I was using basics in a different way, I believe, than how Kevin would describe it in terms of the foundations. But it's similar to what you're saying in that you still have to put in the work. Not to make it about myself though. If I reflect on my own air quotes non hockey career, playing career, I mean, being a data person, having worked in the data industry now about 13 years, I wish I had this sort of data and technology then to your point, to help me understand how I'm progressing in an
Yeah.
objective way, right? As opposed to me, at 17, 16, 17, 18, even 19, I thought I had all the answers. I knew everything. Clearly it was not the case. And in those times, no, not that long ago, testing was done. Again, it's just like a kind of did you do the work, but it didn't give you a barometer of like to what extent did you improve. And that is what is so fascinating for the athletes today is the data does exist to show you that, right? You remove your subjective bias, which also in a more recent episode, TJ Tomasz Yanas and I discussed from the overall athlete perspective in terms of development, but then soccer players or football players from his point of view is like, how do you remove the coaching bias so that it's like, hey, the numbers are the numbers, and here are the baselines we're trying to progress to, and there's the why, right? Because what I also hear, in these episodes and then offline conversations is more and more of the again younger athletes today, they want to know why, not to challenge the coach. Maybe sometimes, but more of like, why am I doing this? How does this help me? Just help me understand. Because as you know, I think we all do, once you have that answer, you buy in.
Yeah, the intent is driven up, right? And that's one thing I always challenge our guys, like ask questions. If you're not sure, ask. The best one oftentimes tends to be our college players. They tend to ask a few more questions. Hey, why? Especially if they have a bit of a Canese background or exercise science background, whatever they're saying in college, they tend to want to know more, right? They don't just want to do work because you told them to do work. They want to do work that will actually be meaningful to them and actually help them move forward, move the needle forwards. They tend to be really good, but you're right. The younger kids want to know a bit better too. They're more tentative toward be driven towards like the data in terms of like on ice play. And they're fortunate. Like we look at our hockey academy, our guys can get a full breakdown of their game 24 hours after the game is played with like the block shots, their amount of shifts, their time playing on the ice, like just like it is at the pro levels. With AI now, it's such a versatile tool that we can use, and their shifts are all breaking down. So it's pretty cool. But again, the data is there. You still have to put in the work. It's still on the athletes to go and look at all the data that is collected, look at what they have to improve on, and connect with their coaches. Hey, what do I need to prove? What do we need to do here? What do we have to move forward, right? But you're right. Like the more why, and I'm a big fan of that. When I believe a coach should know how to explain the why. You should know the why behind everything. Why this exercise selection? Why this prescription? Why this time to work out? I think it's very, very crucial. If you can't say why, then you got to ask questions like, am I with the right coach? Am I doing something that's very beneficial to me? Or is this simply like another cookie cutter passed on and I'm doing the same work as somebody else, right? Like the why is very crucial. And I love knowing the athletes ask why, because now the intent drives, right? They know, okay, I'm doing this for that purpose. I'm going to put more intent behind it. And then we set better connections and the workout is that much more efficient. Now it doesn't matter how much weight they have on the bar. If we're using a barbell, the intent is there and the intent drives performance. So the more intentful they are, the more performance they're going to get.
Yes, like 100%. And so from your just to kind of summarize before we jump into the, I guess, first topic, your perspective is really driven from, like you stated, your own experience, the challenges, I mean, my words, challenges you had with recurring injuries and having to build yourself back up. And you were like, hey, I don't want other people to go through this.
No.
Let me help other people, which is what is the intention of a coach. The coach is there to be helpful. So thank you for that in terms of setting the table, so to speak, from where your point of view comes from. Now let's jump into the first, I guess, area or topic around gap in development, because one way to look at it is there's all the data, all the technology. If there are personalized plans, in theory, should not be gaps if people are doing the work. So I'm not going to ask you necessarily why there is a gap, but let's again focus from the data and technology perspective. How, like, can you elaborate further as to how data and technology could be used to show these athletes where they're lagging? Maybe you have some specific examples from your own experience or players that you're coaching or people that you've worked with, and like where they're lagging. And again, more importantly, how to help fill that gap between the raw talent, right?
Yeah.
Because many people can have talent,
Mm-hmm.
and the true development in terms of that progression to where it is that they want to get to in terms of like their ideal outcome or their end state, so to speak.
Yeah. I'll see. It depends on which we're looking at. If we're looking more goalie specific standpoint here, we can use it off ice. We use VR a lot for our goalies. And then we use Sense Arena, which is also an incredible tool if well used, especially, right? Like there's a lot of data being collected. And I'll use one example is we had one of our academy goalie that early on in the season, we realized that his ability to track was low and his numbers on the VR told us that. So now we had to dig a little deeper. Okay, why is that happening? And then we saw the progression and we realized there's a bit of a hand structure, head positioning that caused him to not track the puck fully. So what happened, he created delay from when he made the initial save to the rebound or second save that had to be done, or simply an ability to track and not get scored on. So if we addressed those little details and made a big difference, we saw his numbers improve. Now his save percentage was up, his GA was like dropping, and he started playing more games and he's more consistent, right? And that's one thing, especially if we want our goalies to do well. And if we're playing 3 or 4 games on a weekend, because we're an academy style, we want to make sure our guys can be consistent over 4 games. We don't need them to be good one and bad the other one, because like it costs us games. So that was one example where we can use that is like, hey, like what do we have access to? And then from there, it doesn't mean we're only going to use technology, but we have a standard, like a standard we want to achieve. And we have a baseline, okay, this is where we're at. We need to climb to here. And then we saw the game progressing towards that way. So the data is like, hey, where we look at this deficiency, the holes of the athletes, right? Like if he's really good at, for example, positioning, well, I don't need to spend more time on positioning. I know that. But if his tracking is down, what can I do to improve his tracking? And if I looked on his performance standpoint, so physical standpoint, he is a very mobile goalie, great. But does he have the strength to sustain that? That's another point. So when we look at strength opponents, okay, there's a bit of a deficiency here. Maybe he accesses his mobility and his hip that allows him to do what we call a soft seal, but can you come out of it efficiently so we can beat the play, arrive on time, be stable? Those are all things that we could add. So deficiency will end up, what we're going to do on ice and off ice, we'll look at where the holes are and we address those. Where sometimes it falls into crack is we might put too much emphasis on those little deficiency and we still neglect some of the other work. And now we send again imbalance happening on the other side. Now, at that point, the efficiency is improving on those areas that were down, but the place that were already good might be like dipping because we haven't spent enough. So that's one thing that gets more tricky at times. We're going to make sure we still address everything, but a bit more emphasis might be on those deficiency that the athlete might have, especially our goals in this case is like, hey, like what is it that we need him to be one so he's healthy, can play back-to-back games needed, especially at the youth level. Sometimes youth meaning under 18, sometimes they might play 2 games in less than 24 hours. And even like I've seen cases last year where we had guys playing back-to-back in less than 12. There was a few days where we had to play a double header because it's a tournament. It's a lot of load, right? If they're going to see 30 shots a game, but there's about 50 shots attempts, that's probably 50 butterflies given, maybe more. It's a lot of wear and tears on the body. So also we're going to look at that. Hey, how can we make sure that he can sustain that stress? No different than a pitcher in baseball. If they're going to throw 100 pitches, we got to make sure we address the arm so he doesn't break down the next time he throws 100 pitches. Fortunately for us goalies, that we have to practice. It's not like we can just stop going down to butterflies during practice, or like we don't pick warm up because we want to save our legs, right? So we got to account for all that. So that also going to be put into effect afterwards, right? We got to rebalance the body, address the body, make sure that we don't break down. And sadly, right now is that we see a lot of younger goalies having FAI issues, which is very common in hockey, but we're seeing more and more younger goalies having to go for surgery. That to me is an issue, right? We shouldn't have to have surgery at 18, 16 years old, but sadly, we're seeing that right now. So yes, we can always argue maybe they're playing too much year-round hockey. Maybe they need a little more diversification with their sports. But is there data we can use and like pre-screening that can help us out? Yes. And now we can address those deficiency and make sure those athletes don't break down before the time, right? To see surgery later on in life, it's highly possible. We see at the NHL level. We see like Thatcher Demko right now is going for surgery again. I don't know all the details, but I know he's had some surgery regarding his hip. So, and that's more common at that level, but to see that 16 to 18 years old, even 20 is very concerning. And it's something that I hope to never have to see with my athletes, especially if they've been away from the get-go. Not saying that injuries can be prevented. There's a lot of injuries that just their nature, like the nature of the sport. But if we can reduce the likeliness of that or make sure they have a longevity, like a long career. And we all know from a standpoint, goalies don't develop nearly as fast as skaters. We see a lot of 18 years old, 19 years old, like Macklin Celebrity come into the NHL, dominate, but we rarely see a goalie at 18, 19 coming in to be a starter in the NHL, right? They're about that 23 to 25 when they start breaking in. So we want to make sure that, hey, our guys can have a long career before they can actually break in. If they start breaking up before and their body let them down, how are you going to sign a contract if you're not playing because you're injured, right? Like those are all things that we need to keep in mind when we train. And those are where data comes in effect. Those issues are something we got to measure, account, and track to stay on path so that our athletes can stay healthy and get as far as they can.
And it doesn't get any easier as we age.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, if I can give advice that I might have given in the past to any athletes, younger athletes listening, when the older person tells you, take care of your body, it doesn't get easier. And there's different cliffs, like maybe 30, 35, 40. They're not making it up. Again, going back to when I was 17, 18, 19, I was like, you're crazy. I'm like Superman. I can do whatever I want. Yeah. It does not work that way, even if you do a decent job taking care of yourself. So it's one of those, I guess, again, it's curious from the goaltender perspective because, and I did try, I think one practice and like mites or squirts, I was like, I want to be goalie because I like the, the helmets that the NHL players have. And I tried one practice, like, I would not be able to do this. In terms of like my frame and size. And I was like, I don't want these things being fired at me. But if you, I guess, remove yourself from that and think of like a air quotes normal psychology perspective, like you want to get to the top as fast as you can, right?
Yes.
It's like now, and I'm sure, probably Sidney Crosby was an example of this for the little bit older generation. And now like a Celebrini, it's like, again, like you said, dominating at 18, where for goaltender, there should be, and there, I'm sure there is, education of like your arc of your career is different.
Yes.
Like focus on yourself. And that's why I was excited to talk to you in terms of for data in sports, because I know nothing about goalies. And from the outside observer, you're just like, well, just stop the puck. It's easy. But what you just spoke to is so layered and so complex that it is actually mind blowing, right? It's not just because I thought of it as like positioning, right? You play angles because that's what the shooters are taught. Is like, this is what the goaltender will do. Here are the angles, and that's what it is. But no, you're talking about hand positioning, you're talking about mobility, and then even so there's layers to it in terms of statistics, right? The high level or top level of goals against, save percentage tells you part of the picture. But what you just spoke to, one of the stats I want to come back to gives an example of that why that we spoke to in the beginning. Where now the way that data is being collected, like you said, in game, goaltender might have great save percentage overall, right? But if you break it down a layer deeper, they're giving up their first save higher percentage, but they give up massive rebounds, leaving themselves and the team exposed. And that can be, again, probably from like the video and computer vision showing like, hey, here's like your pattern of your play that is generally leading to this, probably like you mentioned, not so dissimilar to a pitcher in baseball in terms of here's what's happening, and it can help explain here's why we are going to work on
Oh,
this
exactly.
component
Right.
of it.
I think the why again, once again, like we want to get the intent behind it. So you're right. If we look deeper, and we can look at layer where the shots are coming from, which shots are most likely to give out rebounds, and then like if there's an issue with maybe it's the athletes is giving a lot of rebound from further out, then we're gonna look at is it a and if we look and always gonna look at a context, right? It's never just the data. There's a context that comes with it.
Mhm.
So if we look at okay, like if we watch the film and we see he's going to rebounds, well, how's this pre-save process? He's in a good place. He's screened. Those are all things. But then we realize hey, it's a clean shot, but there's still a bad rebound or rebound given out of this. Then maybe it's more so like an ocular issue, right? Maybe he does have an issue with tracking properly. But if it's not the case, maybe it's just a lack of preparedness. Maybe his structure's not very good. Maybe he's overly engaged, right? Those are all things that come in effect. And then as we climb, that's something you talk. It's so layered, right? Like it comes to a point, we see a lot of goals, it's no longer just the ability to track the puck, but can you read the shot? Can you anticipate the plays? Now, if it's a 2-on-1, depending on how your defenseman is placed, is it going to be most likely a pass? Going to be a shot? He's going to shoot short side, far side. Like those are all things that comes in effect, and it's just happening so good in the brain. But before we get to those levels, we got to count, okay, like, can we really simplify the basic so you can be good? So your pre-save, your post-save, your like the save process itself, right? Those are all things that come in effect. And you're right. Now we're going to look at it a little deeper. And then if we see that this athlete is constantly getting beat, say high blocker side, but only in certain areas. Okay, why is that? Is it a structure thing? Is it the way he plays the game in that era? So we're fortunate now than ever. We can look at all those data, which I wish I could have
Seriously.
had.
Yeah.
I never. We had to use VHS or DVD to look at games that had the pixels. You couldn't really see the puck, and now like they can have a game breaking down within 24 hours, right? Like it's incredible. But the work needs to put in, and I think the other one is like the knowledge, right? The coaching staff, the coaches that use the technology needs to have the knowledge because it's easy to get lost in the noise. There's so many data, so much data out there. There's so much collection we can have. But if you don't know how to interpret everything, if you don't understand it and you get caught in everything, then you just get overwhelmed. So the knowledge comes in handy as well, right? So that's why it's crucial. Okay, you can collect as much data as you want, but if you don't use it, what's even the point? And I know there's people out there because I've had conversation with some that they just collect for the sake of collecting. It looks good on the athlete standpoint, but it's never put into effect. So we got to make sure we can collect the data, but also apply it as well. That's the other point. So that knowledge is crucial, and I think having played the game at high level does help. In some levels, some is formal education, the degree, the certifications, everything you do, the extra learning that you're going to keep on doing because we talked about it earlier. It's constantly evolving, right? We have more data coming in, more science coming in. We have new technology, new everything. So we got to stay on top of everything, which is also demanding. You're working with X amount of athletes a day. You're doing so much, and staying on top of that. But it's part of the game, and you have to do it. Otherwise, not only you suffer, but who suffer the most? Also, will be the athletes. And you can set up. We got to be able to break down and help them out because it's their development. It's for them. It has nothing to do with us. It's entirely for them. So we
Hmm.
want to give back to our athletes as much as we can.
Yes. And maybe we can jump into the next topic, which we've spoke to a fair amount just now. in terms of the gap in development around the goalie specific metrics. But I want to kind of start with here in terms of going back to virtual reality again, the VR, like the headsets. So what you're saying is, not being facetious, what you're saying is it's not a toy.
It
These
can
VR,
be. It can be. But
these VR headsets I see are not like they're actual legit
oh,
training
yeah.
devices. Okay.
100%. 100%. Yeah, it's incredible. You have the option to either use a 2D model, you have a 3D model, you have coaches on there that can coach you through, but it collects all data for you. So we can share the data, we can look at it, we can interpret the data, so we can literally have access to everything we want. And it can even be brought on the ice. If we really wanted to, for some reason, we don't have access to full ice, we don't have access to shooters, we don't have access to net, we can still use the VR on ice that can replicate the same effect. Yeah, it's an incredibly good tool. Sometimes, and it goes to a lot of stuff. So we can be seen as toys, right? A lot of people might see it as a toy. It's fun. It is fun. I myself even enjoy using it, but if you do it using it the right way, it's a very valuable tool. If you're just doing it to the fun of it, hey, it's okay too. There's nothing wrong with having fun with it. Like, it's an awesome tool to have, but you might be leaving a lot of your development on the table if you don't use it the way it's meant to be used, right? Fortunately, what that sensor has done, which I think is incredible, is that it has adapted to every level. So you can have some U16, some U18, some junior, college, pro level shooters. So you can be adapting yourself to quality of shots, the type of releases, the type of play. So it's really cool to see that it can be adapted to the athlete level of the athlete. And there's even a female version as well. So like you can have PWHL player, you can have NCAA players from the female side. So it's cool to have really the type of development you need. And if you want to progress the next step, that's an easy way to get exposed to that next step. So if I have a U18 player trying to go to junior, hey, let's put the junior setting on so you can be exposed to that speed of shots, that execution, right? So I think it's a very cool tool as long as it's well used. I see sometimes athletes that may be a little too high strung with it and they just maybe overdo it. And there's such thing as like puck tracking fatigue. So like if you're doing for an hour for practice, like, yeah, the first 15-20 you'll be really dial, be awesome. But then you might get tired later on, right? Like the mental focus will drift. So it's going to be used the right time, right place, and used the right way. And then don't just do the drills that you like. It's because you like it. It's a great thing. But if you're already good and you just get the same reps, then that's one thing with VR, right? It's not like there's a new rep being added every week. Some of the reps will repeat themselves. So now you don't no longer like really track the puck. You don't just read the release. You actually anticipate it because you know it. So it's going to be well picked. And then sometimes to like step away from that drills, you might forget some of those releases and reads that you've seen before. So we really got to make sure like it's used in the proper way. But yes, it is also a fun tool. I'm not going to take it away from it. It's a fun tool. Now you watch that play. We've done it with our guys. Sometimes we'll have a competition, myself versus our 3 goalies in the academy. And we'll, hey, like, guys, we'll pick a drill. Who's got the best results out of this one, right? So it's always fun to challenge yourself that way. But at the end of the day, it can be a very valuable tool. And the data that it collects, like your angles, your ability to track, and your time of reaction is on there as well. And then there's other type of training on there that we can use for ocular and vestibular. So it's really well done, and something that like I can't recommend enough. I love it. Even yesterday, like one of my goalie back for the summer just had a hip surgery. He's an older college player, and he's like, hey, I can't get on the ice. Can we get on the VR so I can at least get reps in 100%? So like now him being away from the ice for about 6 to 8 months, we can still get him to get some reps so we can use it on a rehab standpoint. So you won't lose that ability to track as much, because that's one of the hardest things for goalies is when you haven't skated a long time, you come back, your ability to track the puck and stay, it's called visual attachment, keep it attached to it. It disappears and it's not nearly as good. So having VR allows us to improve. It's no different than people say visualization when you're injured. It can help your return to play. VR provides that in real life.
Now, I was going to ask that if it could be used like at home
Yeah.
or away from the ice, and like how does it, because it could in theory reduce some of the load, like physical stress load, I would think.
Yeah.
But then the cognitive demands, do they go up or down? Like does it affect them? Is there maybe like you said, is it the too much becomes then negative effect, or
it goes up when I see too much, and I've seen it a few times. It's more so when it's too clustered, and then you'll see a lot of like training back to back. It's no different than a goalie having a morning skates and seeing 100 pucks and having to play a game later. We see all the times they don't do so well in the afternoon or in the evening in that game because they're puck fatigue. They've seen it so much, like they just don't have the ability to track as well because they're so depleted. More so in that case, But oftentimes, if it's well, staggered through the week and well implemented at during a certain time, it's an awesome tool. But when we see the most benefits of going up is really consistency. That's one thing I noticed. It's not so much how much you're doing within an hour, it's how consistent are you throughout the week. And that's what we saw the biggest result with our guys. Like sometimes just say, let's jump on there and do a 2-minute drill, just get your eyes going, get your hands on track. And that was more and beneficial for goalies than if they just did a very long session, but didn't touch the rest of the time. So that's one thing we realized. The consistency was a big one. And it's all difference in training. It's always about the frequency. Being consistent matters way more than having, say, 2 really hard workout and not work out for 6 to 7 days and come back at it. No, the consistency, we're better off. So micro dosing is being a big one in strength conditioning, especially at the pro levels. And that's something that, same thing with this. If we can micro dose the amount of which we're using it, it's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. It helps you. I was just thinking about like an analogy to my golf game where the more I'm away from it, the less it's like I see the ball, which might make sense or might not, or go to the driving range and hit 100 balls, which is probably crazy if you're not a PGA professional. And you feel great on the range. And then it's more like mentally you're tired on the
Yes.
course playing than physically in terms of that repetition. So that makes sense from that perspective. Now, in terms of like the training, because I don't though this is like very fascinating in terms of the VR, you also focus on velocity based training.
Yes.
Now, my non-expert, very naive understanding of like VBT is like straight line speed. Why do goalies need to do velocity based training, or is it a different form, I guess?
Our patterns might differ, but in terms of velocity, we're looking at the central nervous system, right? We're not necessarily looking at the mechanics itself. So it's how can we implement that power output? The biggest thing to put into this is, if we look really an easy one, it would be a 2-on-1. Like a player comes down to 2-on-1, there's a pass option. Okay, we want to make sure that the goalie can maximize the drive across. So there's a rate of force development needs to be applied for that to happen. VBT allows us to do the same thing. So what we're trying to achieve here is we want to make sure that when the athlete's under the bar, it's not just lifting to lift, because now we're just working out. We are right. We are training to be better, more efficient. So sometimes, especially when it comes to central nervous system fatigue, we do not really care about what the weight is on the bar. We want true efficiency. So that's the reason why we use VBT. If an athlete is depleted, some college athletes might have to work all day. They can come in. I don't want them to learn to be slower, put the same weight they did the week before, but they're tired, they're dehydrated, they haven't eaten well, they haven't slept well. Then putting more bar on the weight will be more detrimental. Their recovery is going to slow down. Their speed is going to be slower. So like, I'm not teaching them to no longer be fast. I'm teaching them to just move heavy force, right? Applying force, move heavy objects. So our goal is not so much to just move heavy, but it's also move with intent. So the VBT allows for intent. Now we know, hey, we want our athletes to be at 1.1, for example, seconds. So hey, we need you to go meter per second, needs to be at that speed. We want you to achieve that. Hey, the bar's too light, you're reaching a 1.3. Okay, let's add a little more load. Let's teach you to be more efficient under heavier load. And then on the opposite side, hey, you know what? There's way too much weight on the bar. You're only reaching 0.9. We're not where we need to be. Or maybe it's the athlete just not understanding that as well, right? Because a lot of these athletes don't understand how to properly apply force, which slows down the rate of force development. So VBT allows to, hey, understand, like, I want you to chase that number. Like, it's kind of like a game, like chase it. So give them a challenge. Athletes love to be challenged. So it's one way, hey, let's maximize that output so we can really get there. So now if we were to measure any other types, like counter motion jumps, sprint, we'll usually see those numbers improve as well. So it's more of an intent. It's an immediate feedback that athletes get to have. And it's very, very measured. So there's no more guessing. Hey, do I put 400 pounds or I put 250 on the bar? Well, let's see what the VBT tells us, right? And then it teaches the athletes to be intentful, which is something, again, working out, you're just lifting to lift. In athletics, we lift with a purpose. Everything is intentful. It's so different when you're skating. You just don't just skate. You skate to try to get faster, right? You want to try to be faster. How can we make that happen? It's in the gym. VBT helps a lot with that. In terms of goalie, for us, we look at it, okay, the positioning is a little tricky. We do want to train our athletes to be able to achieve and reach those position, but on a physiology standpoint, central nervous system demand, it doesn't matter. The basic will be what it is for the lift, but the intent will matter. Now, can we translate that to having a greater backside push? Can we translate that to a better T push? Can you be there at the same time? Or do you have to sprawl every time because you're late behind the plate? That's another issue as well, right? So we don't want them to be weaker and be late, because now if they're always in a split making that save, yeah, it looks incredible for
Yeah.
highlights, but it's not efficient. And if you're always in a split, and if a guy falls through, the risk of injuries increases, wear and tears. But if you make the save and as a rebound, you're in a vulnerable position to make that next save. So those are things that correlates, right? We can really bridge the gap from your performance on ice with your off ice development, so that you're not only healthier, but you're also a better goalie. So now, because if you arrive on time, you can maybe reset to your feet. You can be planted. You're more stable. So your save process is better. Your recovery is better. So all that goes hand in hand. And that's one thing that with Evo, we try to really close the gap. We want to close the gap from what we can do off ice to on ice. Technology is a driven point to that. It drives us to make sure we have as much as possible a linear path towards that development on ice.
It's the how. It's the intention is the how and the what, but really everything you're doing is intent based. And
It is. It has
I'm,
to be.
I'm annoyed with myself because last summer at the Football Science Institute conference on high performance in soccer, there was a gentleman that spoke about this topic when it comes to training, about intention.
Mhm.
And they did these studies about how, so I'm going to find my notes and share it in these show notes, and I'll follow up with you and share, because it's very fascinating. It's what you're speaking to, where just having like the intent in your mind beforehand leads to better performance versus air quotes control group that they were just told, just do the exercise, right? Do the lift, do the exercise, and just the amount of force generated, speed, what have you, whatever the metric was, there was I believe, material difference or statistically significant difference in terms of outputs, especially over time, only because, or the way they controlled for, was their intent behind every rep, because that's what they were told before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I read similar stories or some study like that. They talked about how some athletes barely had any weights. They just had to use their body or just the barbell, but they had to maximize the intent, the force application. So they have them think, if you're lifting, lift as if you're lifting 400 pounds. They might not know what that's like, but they know it's heavy. That intent made them get stronger than the athletes actually lifted weights at a high greater resistance, because the intent is what connects with the brain, and strength comes from brain connection. Central nervous system is what comes through. So if we want muscle development, and there's some actually intent that worked out really well for growth, but in terms of performance, it's all about the intent. It's all about what the brain can do. So it's a brain connection with the muscles. Without that connections, which is what intent comes in, we don't have true development, or we're leaving a lot behind on the table. And we want to make sure we get as much as we can with every session.
yeah, so some advice there before we get into this topic about the future of long-term athlete development, and your advice is like, take care of this, take care of your brain,
Yes.
and have intention behind what you do. I mean, it's kind of like the expression just in general in terms of life is like, don't like sleepwalk through life and
No,
just be
right?
like,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, have a sense of purpose. Like, many people have said this, I don't know what to say, but Simon Sinek has the book Start With Why. It's like, have an idea of why. If your why is very strong, then you will get to where you want to get to. You get past the hurdles and like the mental blockages you might have. So I genuinely love that. And we, in terms of when we chatted the other week about how to structure the episode, which we want to talk about, we didn't go into that, which I'm glad we did not,
Yeah.
because it's, this is amazing realization for me in terms of how to think about this. Also, like, advice for others is like, easier on these goalies. Like, this sounds so complicated
It
in
is.
terms of like what goes into making a save and playing. It's not, I mean, it is like the pitchers, like you said, from like pitch count maybe perhaps, but there's so much more complexity, because in baseball it's 1v1, the pitcher and the batter, and the pitcher is actually in control. In this case, the goaltender is reacting, and there's so many more
There's
factors.
just, yeah. There's so many reads. It's crazy. Like, if you know your structure defensively, so you know where your defensemen, your players should be located, but there's always breakdowns, right? So being aware of what's going on the ice, and then at a higher level, it's easier in a sense, right? Because like, what your team structure is going to look like. You have ideas, you can watch your film, and you have your structure. But at the end of the day, like, there's a full read. I got to read, hey, like, if the player's on the half wall, what are the possible option for a goal? What are possible outcomes if he makes this play? And then where are my defensemen? Are they actually taking the stick away? Do I have to worry about a stick in that lane? There's so many things like that. And we don't realize, but that goes in our head like so fast that we might think it's just a second nature, but that's something that can be taught. It's something we have to teach and learn.
Mm-hmm.
And then something that like he goes back to looking at data, right? Like we talked earlier, if the goalie gets beat also on this play, then why? Maybe he's not making the right reads, so many things. But yeah, like you look at, is the player looking? Is he not looking? Or is the blade open? Is the blade closed? Else the shut, the release looking. And those are all things that comes in effect. Is this high quality shot? Is it not? Like there's so many things like that comes, and it's a very layered position, which people don't realize. It's not just being in a right angle and then putting your body from the puck. And then we all know, and the goalies and the shooters are actually so good these days. Like they don't just shoot at you unless they don't have much time and there's a stick on them. They might shoot more towards their chest, but they're picking corners. They're picking the inside post above the pads where it's harder to reach. They're smart, right? And we hear more stories now where NHL players, pro players will spend the summer shooting on goalies in goalie camps so they can learn how to pick goalies apart. So they can see tendencies of goalies so they can be better scorers, right? So now like goalies have to do kind of same thing. Okay, we look, hey, like what can we do? What are the tendencies of shooters? Where are they mostly tend to have to shoot? At the younger age, it's easy. They all want that bar down.
Bar down.
It doesn't count if it's not bar down, right? But I know from practicing with WHL players and the best players don't always go for the bar down. They look for wherever holes they can find. And that's what good players do. That's what goalies going to build their structure to eliminate those holes and those exposures. So yeah, it's a very layered position. There's so much more than just being big, staying in front of the puck and hopefully it hits you or making a save. Like there's so much that goes beyond that.
Yeah, and this is a very non-data driven observation. Folks have been watching the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs right now. Like most of these goals, like probably 99% are not bar down. Like the fair amount seem literally on the ice.
Yeah, there's so many cases. Or actually, the first game between Minnesota and Colorado, there's some really weird goals. But all playoff long, how many times it hit the back of the board, went off a skate? Like it happened against Montreal. It happens against Carter Hart in Vegas. Like there's been so many cases, just weird one. I know in game one, there was a really weird deflection from Minnesota that went over Wedgwood. No, it's not always going to be a bar down, right? Like especially when the game gets so tight defensive like it is right now, that shot probably won't get through anyway. So how many shots really were goals like through a screen and through a deflection, right? So they're looking for sticks. Guys are smart. They're looking for sticks, right? They're going to find ways to not necessarily have to beat the goalie straight on. But you're right. Like there hasn't been that many like high level, like bar down shots. There's been a lot of digs. There's been a lot of other type plays, but plus is hard. You won't get that nice look and have all that time just plays that puck exactly what you want. So that's more on the shooter side. They have to learn all that. Like, hey, learn the rest. But you're right. There has been some really weird goals and not that many have been like a true straight on shot bar down. There's been leaky goals. There's been so many different type of goals, but yeah, that youth mentality, if it's not bar down, it doesn't count. That's why if you go into practice when they're youth, you hear a lot of glass because they're all trying to go down, right? It's like, I get it. Goalies may be a little smaller, but there's other ways to score goals than just shoot high every time. So,
and more perhaps relevant to me now in the like beer league or men's pickup or what have you, you see the same thing. Everyone, stick handling through, try sticking out through everybody and just rip the corner. It's just like, what are we doing? Like this is not the way that that goals are scored. Okay. I really appreciate going to that deep dive into the goalie specific metrics as a follow-up to the gap in development. Before we get into like I mentioned at the top, only main segment of behind the data, let's spend a little bit of time on the future of long-term athlete development, including some advice that you have for athletes. And I'm not going to ask you like, how do I score more goals? I mean, that's a different story, but you did give a tip in terms of like studying the goalies and watching. So I'll do that, but more seriously and to the point of the topic, like what kind of advice can you give to them, even from a mindset perspective? And then let's start there.
The number one, and I actually have heard that from Noah Welsh. He's a former professional hockey player.
Oh yeah, Harvard, I think, right?
Was that?
I think he played at Harvard, right?
Yeah, and then he played for Providence. He was a Boston draft picks, I believe. But yeah, a former NHL player, pro player. And one of the best advice he said, and I kind of went on, and I've heard it multiple times ever since, is that parents have to do their due diligence. And then he was fortunate. I'll tell his story. He basically said like nobody in his family played hockey, and he was trying to get into hockey. He's loving it, and he wants to start training to next level. And his mom and dad looked around, did their homework, and they found Mike Boyle. Fortunately for him, they found Mike Boyle. Mike Boyle is incredible. He's a pioneer conditioning, right? So that's who he has as strength coach, and that Mike helped him become who he is now and what he was able to do. So the one thing I'd say for the long-term development of the athlete is like, do your due diligence as parents. as an athlete as well, find the people that are equipped to help you to next level, right? It's not just who they've helped in the past, because if they're no longer really helping anyone, that doesn't help. Look at no certification, look at education, look at what their pedigree is 100%, what their experience is and who they work with. That always help. But look beyond just what the highlight flashy things they might show, post, really dig deep, because there's always someone out there who's really going to help and benefit you. They might not be as well known. That's one thing I'd say. So surround yourself with the best people that have your best interest at heart and that can really help you down the road, because it's a long journey. It's an awesome journey. It's a great time, but it's long. And if you have someone that may not be as good, may not give you the time of day to really help you out, then what's the point? You're going to spend a lot of money and your development will be staggered, or it's going to be very slow compared to other athletes, right? And granted, your development will never be the same as somebody else. Everybody is different, but find the best tools for you. I think that's number one. Surround yourself with people that care about you. Surround yourself with people that are knowledgeable, that can really help you. And there's a lot of great coaches in the world that can help you. And if there's no one in your area, then reach out. A lot of people are more likely to do it online now. Again, technology is awesome, right? We can do a lot remotely. And there's a lot of great people that just focus on that also. That for me, that's the number one, because I was fortunate growing up. I had some good people that cared, but they may not have been the best in terms of what they were doing. Maybe that's another factor to why I had so many injuries, because I just kept beating myself down constantly, because we worked super hard, but the knowledge might not have been where it needed to be. But they cared. At least they helped me on other aspects, some aspects. So make sure you find someone that can surround you with everything that you need. Like the mental aspect is massive. That's something that I wish I could have learned earlier in my career. Surround yourself with people that can, if they don't have the resources that can help you, they can at least pass you on to somebody else that can also help you in that department. And be coachable. I think it's a big one. I've encountered more and more athletes over the last few years where it's only one person is right and they don't take in. I believe everybody has something to offer. Everybody can help you get to the next level, but do due diligence. Look at what you have. Don't worry about all the flashy right now. Just worry about getting a good solid foundation base. Just kind of going back to what Kevin Neal said, right? Like we want to make sure that like you're good at the foundation and we'll stack everything else on top of that. But I think that number one starts with having someone in your corner that will really be able to be there for you and support you through your journey, but also have the knowledge and the know-how to make the best version of yourself.
I mean, that's just like very critical sage advice for life in general.
Yeah.
In terms of like, it's your journey, own your journey. Everyone's is different. Find the people who care, right? Just because somebody helps somebody else doesn't mean they're right for you. Right? That applies to everything. And then to your point, and I agree, like, and Nikita Kashirski and I talked about this on a very early episode in terms of like, because he and I played junior together before going to college. It was like the resources that exist today. Like there's so many. And like you said, the online, I mean, I look at it as like, it's almost like shame on you if you are not doing like the work because of
Yeah.
all the amount of resources and tools that exist.
Yeah, and now more than ever, you can find access to almost everything, right? Like it's not hard. And even like if you don't know what it should look like in terms of a lot, even for coaches too, like how many behind the scenes do we now have with college teams and NHL teams or pro teams have their like 24 access shows? Like if you don't know, look at what they're doing and try to mimic what they're doing. Like if you want to be a pro, act like a pro, be that pro right now. The best advice always gives our guys for us, I think, and what's given to me is like, if you want to sign that next $1 million contract, whatever the amount is for you, what would you do to sign that contract? Do that right now. Why wait? Yes, you may not have the money that they have to invest as much, but there's still ways to do it that is resemble the pros, and then do whatever it takes for you to that down the road, you do sign that contract.
I love that from a like having the future perspective, like putting your mindset in that state, and then it's like you're working backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not? Right. Like if the
Yeah.
pros are doing it, why wouldn't you want to do what the pros are doing? They're pros for a reason.
And that's free. Doing that doesn't
Yeah.
cost anything in terms of that. So in terms of like working backwards to maybe again going forwards in terms of the future, did want to get your thoughts. You mentioned like the cookie cutter approaches, standardized like templates that do exist. Like, is that always gonna be the case, or are we moving to like these reassessment systems, like you
I think
mentioned?
we're moving a lot more towards those readjustment and like reassessing through and like, I'm not saying there's not workouts that will look the same. At the end of the day, though, the needs for each sport is the same. We're trying to get more and more tailored, right? Because again, if you have, I'll take example. So I was working with this one hockey team this year. There's one athlete who is 6'4", 240 pounds, and there's an athlete who's and 20 years old, and an athlete who's 16 and 170 pounds and 6 feet. Their needs are entirely different, right? Their time of play was different. So we need to very specialize more for that reason. But there's also this aspect. Do you have access to technology to assess those players? Do you have the staff to help with that? Those are all things that comes in handy. Can we completely get away from that cookie cutter? I think there's a lot of work to be put into this. That yes, it can be done, but at the end of the day, there's still a certain needs that's very resembling to one another. And then there's workouts like maybe we're doing a priming workout the day before a game. The prime workout, at the end of the day, we all need the same ish development preparation for the game. So that could be a little more cookie cutters. But in terms of development, no, I don't think the cookie cutter will work anymore. And I think we're really trying to fade away from that. We're seeing more and more guys trying to develop. For cost efficiency, it is still present, right? Because nobody can afford the very luxurious, because it is expensive to be more tailored. So there is still that basic cookie cutter options that is still very good. It will give you development. Will it give you the same amount as if you were in person present tailored to? No, but it will still give you something. So it's about more maybe versatility to what can be available and approachable for an athlete, especially if you do remote online. Sometimes it's tough to assess and reassess an athlete without being present, technology, and all that stuff. So the data might not be collected, or the same type of data might not be accessible. So the cookie cutters, I think, is still somewhat present, still needed. The foundation is the foundation, right? At the beginning of the day, we just got to learn to move. So there's not a lot we can change. Can we span a bit more emphasis on certain movement? Because like some athletes can be really good at the hinge, while others might not be. So that's more so in that sense. And a lot of the lifts they make it resemble like when we look at hypertrophy, there's only so many we can do, right? Like it's hypertrophy is what it is we want to make. So it's going to resemble a lot what a bodybuilder will do to an extent. But there comes a time within a development that we really start tailoring to what the needs are, right? Of each athlete's. And granted, like when we look at body composition, like again, we look at hypertrophy, for example, some guys might need to put more weight than others. Some guys might put weight on easier than others. So again, there's still some demand for specificity to the athlete that is required. But yes, I think we're going to see more and more group fading away. One big topic, and Kevin Neal talked about that. So he talked about the five bucket system. I know Alex Sirard with Bold Athletics in Calgary talks as well. When you have big groups and you only have so much staff and equipment and facilities, especially in high school facilities, the five bucket's a good one, right? We tailored to what their most basic needs are. So if we can look, say we have the goalie bucket, might have body composition bucket, might have speed needing or velocity deficient, and then we can have power deficient, strength deficient. Group simplifies, makes it a little easier. But again, we look at it, it's still a more tailored approach to what the athlete's needs are. Not saying the athlete cannot jump from buckets to buckets, but at least we have an idea, hey, like my biggest deficiency for me, I'm not strong enough. Great, then we're going to put you in the strength side, and we're going to put more emphasis on strength. Gets you strong and capable of lifting more weights or just being able to withstand certain positions. So yes, I think we're going to see more of that tailoring moving forward. And again, it will fall down on, is the strength coach able to do it? Does he have technology to know how the knowledge to apply it? That's going to be one. And you have to be able, again, like I said earlier, you have to be able to interpret the data. If you collect the data, but you don't understand it, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Yes. And I still see it a lot, to be honest.
Same.
Maybe it's a lack of knowledge. Maybe it's just laziness, right? Because it is time consuming. If you have 60 athletes coming through your doors and you have to look at every single one athletes and profile them and build their programs, it's a lot of work. But it's part of the job, in my belief, and then something that needs to be done so the athletes have the best results in the day. And it's, again, not about us, it's about them. So we got to give back to our athletes.
Yes, and I believe that what you just described exists in many industries, and this notion of a standard air quotes cookie cutter way versus more personalization, having programs tailored and for similar reasons, but the table stakes going forward is going to be down the spectrum of more of the personalization. It's just required. I mean, there's too much infrastructure very broadly that exists in terms of the data technology, the ability to analyze, et cetera. And some of it, as is the case in technology waves, is there's potentially skill gap with the people interpreting, but they always catch up. The technology always moves the fastest. The humans then do catch up as we need to. And again, or not again, though, computer can't train the player or human necessarily. It's like the human has to do it. And then At the end of the day, players still, like we said, the player still has to do the work, but the players have to play. So really appreciate your perspective on the future and then your advice. So let's wrap it here with behind the data. We started with you. We will finish with you. 4 rapid fire questions here with about Alex, away from sports, away from hockey. No particular order, but maybe it's always the same order. Is there a is there a place that's near to your heart or very special to you that could be far, like close to home? It could be far away. And if you want to share why.
Honestly, for me, it's a crease. Anytime I'm on the ice, it's just so liberating. It's freeing. I love it. Yeah, for me, it's a crease. It's weird to say, but it's a hockey crease. That's for me. I know we said away from everything, but that's where I feel the comfiest is like when I'm on the ice. Like I can just let go of everything, right? And then just have fun, get lost. So granted, not every crease and rinks are the same. There's some I prefer over others, but yeah, for me, it's a crease. I'm a goalie. I'm going to stick with a crease.
I love it. And it's like I've said, some people have said, well, I don't know if this is like a good answer. Like, it doesn't matter. It's your answer. I mean, this
Yeah,
is
right.
about, yeah, it's about you. And so I appreciate all of them. And that at least, well, I first thought you said Greece. I was like, oh yeah, Greece is great. Like the Greece.
Never been.
No,
Oh, crease.
the crease is even better. Okay. So to that next one, in terms of food, is there a comfort food that you have or a go-to or like a pregame meal that you just have to have from a routine perspective?
It keeps changing. Yeah, favorite pregame. I still play, right? So I
Mhm,
still
mhm.
play senior hockey. For me, it's always going to be white rice, chicken, and soy sauce. It's basic. I love it. Anything stir fry. At the end of the day, like I love stir fry, so that's my main one. But favorite food, I'm a big breakfast guy. I love breakfast food. No matter what it is, I'm a big breakfast guy. So that's probably mine to me for me. But if we're gonna pregame like anything like that, like I love stir fries. I don't care what kind it is. I just love stir fries.
Easy to make too for those that
Oh
are
yeah,
not
so
the best.
convenient.
Yeah, for those that are not the best cooks and you're trying to get into like nutrition and cooking for yourself, you can do it in one pan, actually.
Easily, yes.
Good one there. Okay. I'm going to go actually out of order, I think. Is there a book? So, is there a book that you've read lately in the last year or two that's had an impact on you, taught you a lesson, and you want to share that with others?
It's been a little longer, but I kind of started rereading it. I love Shoe Dog, the Phil Knight story
Yeah,
about Knight.
yeah.
Love that book. It's probably my favorite book. There's a lot of good books I read and I love reading, but that book is my all time favorite. And I've reading the book and everything else, and especially Building Evil, I've realized like I fell in love with building. I like building athletes. I like building the business, I like building other things like that. So, but seeing the struggle, seeing the behind the scene, and I think Nike is so inspiring in so many ways. So yeah, that was still to this day probably the book that I keep going back to. Um, Majority of the time, the rest of the books I read, they're all like science based books.
Hmm.
Think about too training, injury prevention, injuries, rehab. So nothing overly like fun to sleep for read for a lot of people. But yeah, I would recommend one book for sure. Shoe Dog for or the Phil Knight story is very, very incredible and impressive. I really enjoyed it. Can't recommend it enough.
I agree. And like I was just thinking about it now. It's like, and like him being in Hawaii was like selling insurance or something. It was just like wild for like
Yeah.
a period of his life through the process. I mean, it's one of those where it's like, again, it's, you see the journey and it's just not like Nike is what it is today out of
No.
nothing. It's very, very fascinating. So
Yeah. Like,
I appreciate that recommendation.
yeah. Like the blue ribbon part behind it was pretty impressive. Like all that time, the risk he took, that's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Folks, check that one out. Okay. Last but not least, music. Is there or what's a song that like puts you in a mood or gets you focused or gets you pumped up? Do you have one?
Well, I have too many actually.
First one that comes to your mind, I guess.
Strong by Trap.
Yeah,
I
but
think it.
yeah,
I
good
think
song.
it's because where does it sound? I think it's because it's always been around hockey early on, especially my career. And it's just one of those songs, like as soon as I listen to it, I'm back in hockey. Like I'm in the zone. I'm dialed. No matter where I am, it's one of those things that just brings me back to hockey. So it's probably the one for me. Uh, just because, and I don't know. Like I had it on my iPod and played. Maybe I had one great game listening to just before going on the ice. I don't know, but it stuck with me. That's the one.
It's now in my it's now in my head. Yeah, very, I think, though I don't know exactly what it's about or remember exactly or the lyrics, but I believe pretty apt were related to this episode in terms of the mental aspect, cognitive, in terms of being headstrong to take you on. So
Yeah.
with that, Alex, appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank
This has been awesome, and hope to have you on again in the future.
Absolutely. That was awesome. Thanks, Mike.